there, and welcome to People and Power. I'm Felicity Barr. On today's programme, California's global warming showdown.
So what's wrong with them participating? What's the problem?
You're the one who's saying that they're not orchestrating anything.
They're not. They're being demonized.
Next week, Americans go to the polls to elect Congress and state officials. In California, they'll also be voting on a proposal called Proposition 23, which could have a profound impact on efforts to deal with climate change. In 2006, California passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, landmark legislation designed to significantly reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2020. But Proposition 23 would suspend efforts to reduce those emissions until the state's unemployment rate stayed below 5.5% for 4 consecutive quarters. Now, that's only been achieved 3 times in the last 40 years, and the number of jobless currently stands at more than 12%. Well, with President Obama and Congress unable to pass a national clean energy bill, the state's global warming law was being held as the most powerful stimulus for a green technology revolution in the United States. But as filmmakers Joe Rubin and Dan McKinney discovered, powerful fossil fuel interests are determined to stop California from providing that lead.
Green is geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomic, capitalistic, innovative, patriotic. Green is the new red, white, and blue. Oh, don't let anyone tell you otherwise, okay?
Pulitzer Prize-winning author Tom Friedman is a true believer in the perils of global warming and the promise of green jobs. And he's in California to share the stage with a man who has become a green crusader, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I totally agree. I just want to say one thing to follow up.
Please. And this is why it is so important that we win this, because those oil companies have been very successful in scaring everyone in Washington this year, and they took out the energy bill.
The governor is in the political fight of his life to prevent his landmark global warming legislation from being derailed by Proposition 23, a ballot initiative this November backed by big oil companies.
They know that this is really the only place left.
This is the last
that
firewall.
Is still fighting and is really having great environmental policy. So if they can take us out, then they could be successful. I know we can do it. So let's go and all join together and vote no on Proposition 23.
I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy.
A few hundred miles away in central California, advocates for Proposition 23 gather at a rally sponsored by a local chapter of the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party groups are renowned for their strident opposition to President Barack Obama. But in California, the cause Tea Party supporters are rallying most fervently behind is Prop 23.
It's important that the message of Prop 23 gets out throughout the state because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the epic battle in California and the nation.
A frequent speaker on the Tea Party circuit is the author of Prop 23, Assemblyman Dan Logue.
They're going to regulate the size of your house, how many miles you drive a year, the air in your tire.
Dan Logue came to the California legislature in 2008 on a mission to repeal California's Global Warming Solutions Act.
It was my first bill that I introduced when I was elected to the Assembly as a freshman. The bottom line is this about the greatest loss of freedom from government, from the private sector to government in the history of California.
The Global Warming Solutions Act calls for a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions of about 25% by 2020. To achieve that goal, the state will likely adopt some kind of cap-and-trade system in which operators of oil refineries and other polluters will have to invest in cleaner technology and pay a fee for the CO2 they emit. Those fees will be used to expand clean energy alternatives. The law was passed in 2006, but most of its provisions don't go into effect until 2012. Logue had little success trying to undo the global warming legislation, but his efforts made him some powerful friends. The first-term assemblyman attracted thousands of dollars of political contributions from oil companies. In February of 2010, Logue decided to try a different approach to roll back the global warming law, a ballot initiative he would take directly to voters. But in a high-profile state like California, a successful ballot initiative requires millions of dollars. According to Logue, he called a meeting of potential contributors after launching the Prop 23 effort.
About 2 or 3 weeks later, I met with about 40 business people, small business, large business. They agreed with my analysis.
And the money began pouring in, especially from Valero and Tesoro, 2 Texas-based oil companies.
So it's almost like the stars lined up, and it was just an amazing situation. The real difficult part was knowing that I had 60 days to raise $3 million during the holidays to try to get this thing on the ballot, and fortunately we were able to do that.
Susan Rust is a journalist with the Center for Investigative Reporting. She has been following the money trail.
From Valero Services, that was given on August 5th, 150 from Tesoro, 250 from Valero, 100,000 from Tesoro. The money that is going to support Proposition 23 is almost all from out of state.
And those oil companies are eager to spend in California because the stakes are high. California's global warming law, known as AB 32, would require the oil companies to ultimately spend billions of dollars developing low-carbon fuels and making their refineries less polluting.
If AB 32 were to go through carbon offsets, they're going to have to, rejigger their refinery plants to meet California law. They're going to have to reduce their carbon output. It's going to cost them a lot of money. So they have a really vested interest in this.
Here on the edge of Los Angeles, in a neighborhood called Wilmington, residents live in the shadows of oil refineries operated by Valero and Tesoro. For many, putting less CO2 in the atmosphere is a global issue. But for these people, it's local and personal.
People here in Wilmington are highly impacted by
the air quality here is already among the poorest in the United States. And it's getting worse. That's because higher quality crude is getting scarcer, and so the plants are refining dirtier, higher sulfur oil, which creates more pollution. These young people told us they can feel the difference in their lungs.
I used to be a cheerleader when I was younger, and so when I was at practice, I noticed like my chest would start hurting, like it was like an ache or something, and like I was trying to breathe, but I feel like I didn't get enough air.
People say emissions here from the refinery are particularly bad at night.
I feel like desperate or...
Desperate?
Yeah, because, I cannot breathe at night, especially at night.
Prop 23 is very important for my health as well. My nieces, and I have an unborn child, nieces that are ready to be born next month, and I don't want them growing up problems with asthma.
The oil companies say that they already are meeting tough environmental regulations, and they argue that CO2 emissions are not a pollutant, so that rolling back the Global Warming Solutions Act, AB 32, won't harm people's health in California. Dan Logue agrees.
Carbon emission is not a pollutant. The Earth produces 95% of it. We got to get that in people's heads. We're not getting rid of the pollution levels in California as far as mitigation. We're only changing and postponing AB 32 concerning carbon emissions.
But AB 32's author, State Senator Fran Pavley, says the two issues, greenhouse gases and pollution, are inseparable.
Many people like to say greenhouse gas emissions don't cause the problem. No, when you're making things more energy efficient, you're reducing criteria air pollutants, and you're also reducing global warming pollutants at the same time.
Pavley is a former middle school teacher turned politician. She's campaigning hard across the state to save the global warming solution legislation, like at this rally at the University of California in Los Angeles.
I'm often referred to as the author of California's Clean Air and Energy Standards, but the truth is, those landmark standards aren't about me, they're about you. That's because it's about more than an environment, it's about our future. And it's also about telling Texas, don't mess with California.
Pavley says the oil companies fear that the standards established in California will become a benchmark for the nation. In particular, they don't want to spend the money to produce gasoline that emits less carbon.
That's the low carbon fuel standard. If they have to do it in California, and California's policies become a national policy, that's a huge nightmare for them.
On the face of it, it would seem like Prop 23 would be a long shot in a state that prides itself on championing environmental causes.
Yes on 23!
But the pro-Prop 23 campaign doesn't focus on global warming or pollution. Instead, it focuses on the threat to jobs.
California cannot possibly afford to lose more than 1 million jobs, and we sure as heck can't afford it here in Fresno, with an unemployment rate at almost 25% above the statewide average.
What Prop 23 calls for isn't technically a repeal of California's Global Warming Solutions Act. It calls for a suspension until unemployment falls below 5.5% for 4 consecutive quarters. But with Californians still suffering from over 12% unemployment, the chances of that happening are slim to none.
I have enough bills, but now the politicians...
This pro-Prop 23 ad attempts to tap into Californians' deep anxiety about the economy.
And saves more than 1 million jobs. I want to do my part on global warming. All Yes on 23 says is, let's wait until people are back to work, and we can afford it. Yes on 23, it's common sense.
And the message is resonating here in hard-hit Fresno. Mary Lou Bonneau told us she hadn't heard about oil companies providing millions of dollars of support for Prop 23. All she knows is her family is hurting, and if Prop 23 means more jobs, she's for it.
I have three sons out of work that have never needed work, never. For all their lives they've worked. You know, your manliness, I see one of my sons feeling kind of low because when you meet somebody, hey, where do you work? No, I'm unemployed. I sense it.
California's unemployment rate has risen steadily during the recession, and California's greenhouse gas law is not part of that process. So it's a bit of a bait and switch.
The green zone down here.
Dan Common is a distinguished professor of energy at the University of California, Berkeley, who shared the 2007 Nobel Prize for research on climate change. And he says opponents of the landmark climate change legislation have it all wrong.
My analysis, those done by colleagues in the Department of Economics, indicate that AB 32 would itself create some jobs or create quite a lot of jobs, but none of the credible academic studies say it would cause a cut in jobs.
Common helped author a study that looked at what the economic impacts would be on California were Prop 23 to pass.
Unfortunately, it would undo quite a bit. California would likely be less of a hub for green tech innovation. And at a time of a global recession, the clean tech field is one of the few bright spots that's growing in employment. So Prop 23 would throw out one of the engines of economic growth. A number of those companies and innovative operations would actually move to China, would move to Europe. So we would lose some of that innovative lead. And California's economy has always been built on not making the last widget, but being the place that invents the first widget, the place that comes up with the iPad, that comes up with the iPhone, that comes up with Google, that comes up with these new companies.
One company that is generating hundreds of new green tech jobs is Tesla Motors, based in the Silicon Valley. Tesla is a leader in the electric car industry. One of the aims of the Global Warming Solutions Act is to expand the market for electric cars.
Hood for storage space.
Dermot O'Connell, a vice president at Tesla, showed us around their new corporate headquarters.
Right here we have the finance group. Further over we have the HR folks. Over there we've got inside sales.
Tesla was the boutique company that produced the speedy and expensive electric sports car, the Roadster. Now the company is expanding rapidly and is getting ready to release the first mass production Tesla, the Model S. It's going to be manufactured in a former Toyota plant that was shut down and abandoned during the recession. Today the company has 800 employees overall. By 2012, they're slated to have 2,000.
I happened to be away on vacation when we moved into this facility. When I walked into the facility the day after my vacation ended and came up the stairs to see all these people at work, I had an emotional response. I mean, I almost teared up, and I'm not given to emotion, to see what we were effectively creating here. It's extraordinarily powerful for anyone who hasn't actually had that experience. And that's one of the really neat things about the potential of the green economy. People can work on things that have a real benefit, not just to themselves, but to future generations. This is the powertrain.
O'Connell is bullish on the potential for job growth in alternative energy, transportation, and other green job sectors. That is, unless Prop 23 passes.
Prop 23 were to carry the day and win, and AB 32 was arrested and terminated, you would see a massive flight of capital out of California.
California is outlining a clean energy future, a growing workforce.
Tesla isn't alone in opposing Prop 23. Silicon Valley business leaders seem almost unified in their opposition. Executives at Google and other high-profile investors and CEOs have donated millions of dollars, helping fund an ad campaign opposing the initiative.
Broadcasting live from California's conservative center.
But that hasn't stopped Dan Logue from claiming that measures to create green jobs are a job killer.
And let me give an example of what happened in Spain. For every green job they created in Spain, it cost the taxpayers of $800,000 per job. Their unemployment rate went up to 20%.
As we followed Dan Logue across California campaigning for Proposition 23, we noticed he repeatedly invoked a study of the Spanish economy that he said proved that the pursuit of green jobs would be costly to California's workers.
AB 32 will add and stack more regulations on this state. It will crush the economy.
When we tracked down the study, we discovered it was authored by a far-right libertarian in Spain, Dr. Gabriel Calzada Alvarez. The professor is a regular on the global warming denial circuit, like this conference held in New York last year. Conferences like these have been funded by big supporters of Prop 23, billionaires David and Charles Koch, who run Koch Industries, a Kansas-based company with major oil, timber, and chemical interests.
The issue right now, and the big question is what we're seeing around us the result of man or human activities, or is it a natural phenomenon? And I think the scientific community would tell you, the majority of the scientific community would tell you, 95%, 98% would tell you it's the result of human activities. The Kochs don't believe it, or at least they're putting their money into organizations that say climate change is not the result of human-based activities.
Dr. Calzada's research institute in Spain has received $150,000 from a foundation linked to the Koch brothers.
And Thomas Jefferson, he said the Constitution is a chain for government.
The Kochs have also been a major financial backer of the Tea Party movement and have donated $1 million directly to the Prop 23 campaign.
These are people spending millions of dollars, not just in California, but on a national level, to either discredit or confuse people, to frame the discussion as a choice between the environment and the economy, using scare tactics, misinformation. These are all carefully orchestrated, all tied in together.
We asked Logue about the Koch's behind-the-scenes role.
So what's wrong with them participating? What's the problem?
You're the one who's saying that they're not orchestrating anything.
They're not. They're being demonized. What have they done wrong? Nobody's been able to tell me that.
I think that people are concerned that they're getting out things and they're putting it...
What people is concerned about that? You? Not me. I'm not concerned about it.
The New York Times, who had a leading
Oh, the New York
editorial.
Times, they're so far to the left. The New York Times has no credibility.
President Obama.
Oh, yeah, and there's a real conservative. Come on. Give me a moderate, somebody. I mean, try to get off the extreme left here and try to move a little bit forward.
We asked Logue about his reliance on Dr. Calzada's study, claiming that the pursuit of green jobs leads to job losses.
It's been pretty debunked. The Spanish government looked at his math and said, this isn't true. And the U.S. government looked at his math and said, it isn't true. Vast majority of scientists believe that global warming is real, it's here, it's threatening the planet. Okay. And you're basing your statistics on that guy.
Yes, and I'm proud to. I'll tell you why. You just mentioned the vast number of scientists believe in global warming. Do you know what the number is of scientists that believe in it? Do you have
tell us, no, tell me.
2,500. Now, I have a book in my office that is signed by 31,000 scientists that says global warming is not man-made. Number two, our temperatures have been going down for 9 years in a row. Do you know the ice caps in the Antarctic are almost back to normal?
We wanted to ask the Koch brothers about their support of climate change denial science and Prop 23. They declined our request for an interview. So did Tesoro and Valero Oil. Governor Schwarzenegger hasn't been shy about calling out Texas oil companies and the Koch brothers.
Oil companies like Valero and Tesoro and Frontier and Koch Industries are blatantly trying to manipulate the will of the people and the public good. they want to kill this initiative. They want to kill our laws. And while they're not creating a shell company, they are creating a shell argument that this is about saving jobs. Does anyone really believe that these companies, out of the goodness of their black oil hearts, are spending millions and millions of dollars to protect jobs?
Polls going into next week's election show Prop 23 is in a tight fight, but the No on 23 side seems to be winning an important battle, mobilizing activities across the state.
Have y'all heard about Prop 23 yet?
From impromptu demonstrations at gas stations to phone banks and churches.
I'm calling about an urgent campaign this fall to protect our global warming law from...
Even a rap group got into the act, turning out a hip-hop tune opposing Prop 23. And in the closing days of the campaign, millions of dollars have poured in to defeat the oil company initiative. The director of Avatar and Arnold Schwarzenegger's blockbuster Terminator films, James Cameron, kicked in $1 million to help fund a campaign of innovative ads. Like this one, aimed at youth, that had fun at Texas's expense, featuring film star David Arquette.
So are you going to vote yes on Prop 23?
No. All the mobilization to defeat Prop 23 raises an interesting question. Could the oil company efforts backfire, spurring a growing commitment in America to a green future?
Hey guys, do you have a minute to help fight global warming?
While gathering pledges to vote no on 23, this sophomore at UCLA told us he was so inspired by the campaign, he now plans to start an electric bus company when he graduates.
I want to see more green industry. I want to see less dependence on oil, and I want to see a greener environment.
Both sides in the battle over California's global warming solutions law say the stakes on November 2nd are enormous.
They're going to pass the cost on to you and me and my children. They're going to subsidize these businesses that can't sustain themselves. And they're going to take wealth from the real economy and drive unemployment up to 20% like we did in Spain and put it on an economy that can't sustain itself. You know, if it was good, my question to you, if AB 32 is so great, why do we need a law?
I have this visual, if it's overturned, a couple of people will be the winners. Short-term, oil companies from Texas, they don't have to clean up their polluting plants. They'll be high-fiving around. The other people that'll be celebrating are probably the Chinese, saying we will seize the future and benefit from all the new jobs and creating these technologies to sell to other countries in the world coming from China.
Back in Wilmington, people are working hard to get out the vote, to protect their neighborhood and the planet.
I want to leave my community knowing that I've made a difference and then come back and see that everything's progressed because of what we're doing today.
They're trying to make a profit off of you and off of me. They won't deceive us. Speaking honestly, this is no joke. Vote no on Prop 23.
And that's it for this edition of People in Power. If you'd like to comment on this programme or have any other issues you'd like us to address, then you can contact us on aljazeera.net/English. But until next time, goodbye.